This is crime scene investigator Chris G, leading you under the police tape and into a crime scene. Join me as we discuss the ever-changing world of forensic science. Put on your PPE, ready your fingerprint brushes, and experience the drama of a crime scene. Hello everyone, Chris here, and thank you for tuning in to another podcast. My guest this week is a former colleague of mine, a former supervisor, and now an author, Brian G. You may notice that our surnames are the same, but there's no relation there. He's not my dad, or he'd probably like to think of himself as an older brother. But yeah, we just happen to share the same surname. And since he's left the scenes of crime world, he's written his first book. And it's a very exciting time for him and for us colleagues as well. It's great to know that such a great supervisor is still keeping in touch with the scenes of crime world, even when retired. So listen to my conversation with him. We talk about his book, about his previous career, what's inspired him to write a book, and where the future will take him afterwards. And at the end of this podcast, I'll read out the first chapter so you can get an idea of the story that's going to unfold. Well, stick around and listen to the interview and catch the first chapter right after the interview. Hello everyone, welcome to my podcast. I've got with me Brian G. Hello Brian.
Hello.
And Brian is an author. He's just released his first book. And yeah, I thought I'd have you here just to talk about it. So firstly Brian, tell a little bit about the life of Brian before you started writing.
Well, I spent 27 years working for Scenes of Crime Unit on the South Coast, quite close to where you live, and spent the last 10-15 years as a crime scene manager, so working in and around crime scenes all the time.
I see, so you've got a real knowledge of scenes of crime, forensics and all that background.
Yes. Yeah.
And you started writing the book whilst you were working, is that right?
Yeah, I was diagnosed with cancer, and I had a couple of years, 9 months off, and like a lot of people, had thought to myself, there's always going to be a book, and I found myself with not much to do, so I started writing it there, and got about a third of the way through it, and then sort of put it to one side when I went back to work and that. But when I retired a couple of years later, I took it back and just carried on from there, and finally finished it a couple of years ago now.
I see. And I guess that career has really inspired that book.
It has, yeah. I mean, there's no doubt, and hopefully the people who read it will realise that.
Yeah, because I think from speaking with previous authors, I've spoke with Peter James, as you know, and he goes into such detail about his book and tries to make it very authentic, very true to life, and I guess that's very easy for you to do with that background.
Yeah, I'd like to think so, and some of my early reviews have noticed that it's well detailed on the sort of crime scene investigation side of things.
Yeah. So what inspired you to begin writing the novel in the first place?
As I say, everyone says there's a book in them. Lots of people start one. Some only have 1 or 2 chapters and never finish it. But no, it's funny because I'd always had an idea that I live in Eastbourne, and there's a couple of old crimes from the 1920s, and one in particular. I read a lot about it, and I thought to myself, if I ever write a book, what I'd like to do is go to those sort of one of these old crimes and update it with all the modern techniques and things like that. But then when I actually started writing, even though it was loosely partly that story, it completely went off in a different tangent altogether. And once I started getting my characters in my mind, and etc. I just found that the story that I'd originally chosen was completely different, and my imagination took over, which is something that hopefully is a good thing. But it was more to do with, in the 20 odd years that I worked in scenes of crime, how much everything changed, and then you read some of the stories of the crimes from the 1920s, and again, it's a completely different world to what was around even in the 90s when I first started.
Yeah, I guess it must be interesting, mustn't it? If we could time travel back to the 1920s with all the technology and everything we got now.
Yes, yeah, you got sort of an area of the beach where one of the bodies was found, and the only photograph is about 10 gentlemen with hats and with suits on, all staring at the beach. No sort of, there's no equipment or anything. They're all sort of pointing that that's where she died, on the beach, and it was like nothing. And there's an amazing picture that you must look up one day, and it's the trial. The crime scene, and there's 3 or 4 deep people watching, where this noted sort of pathologist comes down from London, and they're all watching. It's to them, it was like they were movie stars just turned up at this crime scene that nowadays you wouldn't let anyone near it. But and it became the cottage where it happened became a sort of tourist place. They're bringing people down on coaches from London, coming down on coaches and everything to see the cottage where this woman had been chopped up.
I guess they didn't have televisions back then, did they? They just probably had the radio to listen to.
But then the other thing was, the local police wouldn't have dealt with that, because their police officers in those days would have literally just been sort of uniformed, and that was it. I think everyone came from Scotland Yard, the detectives and all these notable top detectives, and as I said, the pathologist Spilsby, he's very so this, and you can tell the way it's written about in the actual crime archives. It's very interesting, completely different to how everything's dealt with today.
See, I didn't know that. I didn't know that there was a hub like in London, like you say, Scotland Yard, and they would be the ones to investigate, I guess, anywhere in the country, would they? Yeah. The police were just a uniform presence in every town in those days. Yeah. And so there's no county forces or anything like that. So anything big, they call on Scotland Yard. So your book is set in present day, is that right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
But I guess you've had, like you say, this picture has inspired you, has it? And various crimes that have happened in the past.
And originally it was, I had an idea, as with using my knowledge, to just update people with how crimes from the early part of the 20s and 30s, and even during the war, and how techniques had changed. But as I said, once I got the author's hat on, I started realising that I was coming up with a story that was going to be moving away from just updating something like that, and I found it much more exciting to write like that. Yeah,
and writing about what you know as well, because like if you're writing about crimes that say happened in the 1920s, I mean, you're not that old, Brian. you're still young compared to those people born in the 1920s. So
be careful. Yeah.
So and I think if you're writing about things that you know, then you're probably going to be a lot more comfortable, and I guess the readers are going to pick up on that as well.
And so far, as I say, some of the reviews I've had have noticed that quite easily. The other thing I wanted to do and is make my main character a Socko, because there's a lot of there's hundreds of detective novels out, and you just walk into Waterstones or somewhere like that and just look at the crime novels area. It's full of loads of them, and they're all different, and then most of them are very good. I read quite a lot of detective novels over the years, but I've never had a Socko as a main character, and that's what I wanted. and from again using my knowledge of how they think and how they approach scenes, wanted to see it from that point of view rather than just not just another detective. There's some really good ones around, but I just wanted to put it from our point of view, sort of thing.
Yeah, because I think like you say, there's very few ones about Sockos or CSIs, but if you watch them on television, it's always quite far-fetched, isn't it? It's
Yes,
always
yeah,
over the
yeah,
top, and some of it is
yeah.
quite unrealistic. And I guess yours is quite true to the mark.
Hopefully, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'll read it and be the judge of it. We can't do that, Brian. What are you on about? So, is this the first book you've written, or are there unpublished ones that
No,
you've done
it
before?
was the first. As I said, I started it some time ago. I'm halfway through a follow-up with the same characters. I found it easier to keep this, Simon Crofts is the senior Socko, who's the main character. So he's going to be. I think there's going to be a trilogy at least, and so that one's halfway through at the moment.
I see. Yeah, that'd be interesting, wouldn't it? Having a senior as a lead character. I'll see if the personality's similar to the Brian that I once knew.
Nothing like him at all.
While I'm on that subject, yeah, we go way back, don't we, Brian?
We do.
I still remember that you were the senior at my first ever post-mortem.
Oh, good.
And you probably don't remember, but I do. So yeah, I was very nervous at this post-mortem. It was the first time I'd ever seen a deceased human being, let alone being cut up and everything like that. And I do remember myself getting a bit kind of nervy while I was there. And I don't know if you did it intentionally or not, but you just came in and you just started chatting to me because I was kind of all by myself, just not knowing what to do. And yeah, I found that really kind of helped me through it, really comforted me. And now whenever I'm at a job and I know that it's someone's first post-mortem, I'll just be like by their side, just chatting to them, just
Yeah,
as
yeah.
as it's normal, really.
Well, it's just it's not a natural thing to attend, and as we know in our job, we learn to live with it. But it is quite daunting to go to your first one, and having been a supervisor around staff, I've seen some good and bad reactions from something like that. So it's always nice to know that it helps someone anyway. That's the main thing.
I'm still doing it. I'm still here, so it might have helped me in the long run. So let's talk about your new book, Murder by the Seaside. The title gives us an idea of what might unfold, but what can you tell us about the story?
It follows basically three main characters. Simon Crofts is the Socko, who is out dealing with everyday sort of suspicious deaths or murders. He's working on the job at the time. So what I wanted to do was use that job as the introduction to how you do a post-mortem, that sort of thing. So I didn't have to keep repeating it every time I do another one. And then in the background, there's a couple of characters. There's a young girl called Bethany who's had quite a troubled background, and she's just making it as a waitress, working hard, trying to get her own place. She comes from broken home, that sort of thing. And there's a guy called Stevie Johnson, who's a bit of he used to run clubs in Ibiza. Everything failed. I don't want to bore you with the whole story because you've got to read it. Comes back to this country, and he's got a very demanding wife, and gets a job as a salesman, as a rep, and somehow him and Bethany meet up. That's all we'll say, by accident as well, and without going into any more detail, Crofts and his team have to try and suss out what happened.
Yeah.
And they'll leave it as that, because any more gives it away too much.
Oh, it sounds very intriguing. So yeah.
But it's all sort of based Hastings, Eastbourne area.
I see.
So people will recognise it quite easily who live around this area. I've used proper named places. I know some authors do and some don't, and there's right and wrongs for both, but I've tended to use sort of actual places,
I guess
made up names.
that would help. That would help like local residents really visualise it, wouldn't it? And get
Yeah,
into
yeah. I've had
the
quite a lot of
story.
interest from local libraries and things like that, or who
Yeah.
all want to stock it because they people like a crime, you know.
Yeah, I think
And
people only like a crime on their doorstep if it's fiction, don't they?
yes, yes, it's amazing. Again, you know, since I've come into the author's world and reading around crime writers and things like that, how much the public love crime fiction. You know, because we've obviously worked in that field for a while. You don't realise um, how intriguing it is to people outside. Things that we do or I used to do on a daily basis, you know, to people outside your job is quite an unusual set of events. So again, you know, it's there is a lot of call for crime fiction,
Yeah,
and there is a lot of crime out there.
yeah. Unfortunately, it keeps us in work, doesn't it?
It does. But there's also a lot of crime or fiction, I meant. I know there's lots of crime.
um, yeah, so it's quite a crowded market, the crime fiction world,
Yes.
and I think it goes without saying that you've done exceptionally well to get published. Um, but what makes your book different from, say, other crime novels?
I think, as I said earlier on, because I've written it from the Socko's perspective, it's not the only one. I have read one or two others, but there aren't many, and I think it would be hard for someone who hasn't worked in the role to write about it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You know, I know that when I've read other crime novels and they've mentioned Sockos or CSIs, there's been a sort of, you know, a two-liner saying, oh, they turned up, bagged a few things, took a few photographs and went again. And it's all very much that, because there is you know, quite a lot of work that the public and crime writers don't really know what we do, and so I decided to go into some detail, and as I said, you know, try to get across the role as well as, you know, making it an interesting story as well.
Yeah. No, I think because there's probably a few books out there where you've got Sockos and CSIs as the main characters, but there's probably very few that are actually written by ex-Sockos and CSIs.
No, I think there's one or two that I've found, and I've read a couple of them as well. So, you know, it's just unusual, and I think that was the side of things that I was trying to get across when I was trying to get published. But of course, most of the publishers that you write to, that doesn't actually mean much to them, because they're just looking at the book itself, sort of thing. So I was glad that I got a good publisher that wanted to take me on, really.
Yeah. Did you have many setbacks trying to get published?
Exactly 64. Not that I counted them. No, it was very much, again, you know, like I said, everyone wants to write a book, and when I finished the book, you know, I had some help editing it, and it was like, right, here we go, and you send them off, and yeah, it's quite a long process. You've got to send off your synopsis and then everything like that, and then you just wait, and sometimes they don't reply at all, and most of the time they're very some very quickly within the hour, saying, oh, it's very nice, but it's not for us, and that was the main answer was they were happy with it, but it's not what they wanted. And you know, whether that's a nice way of saying it was rubbish, I don't know. But in the end, you keep persevering. And it's funny because I keep quoting it now to other authors. I read from a lady. Again, it's probably 3 years ago, and she said, I'm glad I didn't give up 100 rejections, because number 104 was the one where I got published, and I think that kept me going, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I wasn't counting how many rejections I got. I did have it all in a spreadsheet, so I knew, you know, what dates I'd sent them off and everything like that. But it was only after I got published that I counted back, and it was 64. Yes.
Crikey. But that's, I mean, that's a great tale to tell any would-be authors, anyone that's considering doing it, that if you do have a couple of rejections, if it
Yeah.
turns out to be 64, just don't give up. If you
No,
feel like
no.
if you believe in your story, then yeah, certainly persevere with it.
I think so as
Yeah,
well. And as I say, there are a lot of authors out, and there's a lot of publishers out as well. And you know, it's not simply a task of writing a book and sending it off and reading it a month later. The whole process of publishing has taken 2 years.
yeah. Well, that's quite a lengthy time then. So it's what in total 7 years? Did you say?
7 years altogether,
Yeah,
yeah, from the day I started, sort of thing.
yeah. Wow.
It's not that I wrote every day for 7 years. You know, I did come back to it several times, and again, you know, like I said earlier on, a lot of people do what I did, write a few chapters and think, here I go, and then you know, work, life, families take over, and people just don't have the time to do it. And fortunately or unfortunately, I was able to do that.
Yeah, fantastic. So we'll talk about. You say it's set in Eastbourne and Hastings. I think we've kind of already sort of covered this, but why did you choose Sussex and particularly Eastbourne and Hastings as your backdrop for your
I
story?
think again because it's an area that I know. I've lived here most of my life and I've worked here most of my life, so it actually made it easier. I did toy with an idea of calling it a fictional town, as you know, you see it on a lot of the crime dramas. You know, it's always sort of Westfield Police or something, you know, a random police force that's been made up, isn't it?
I could just think of Gotham City. That's that shows
But-
my age, doesn't it?
But every time, you know, even some of the big ones, you know, like Line of Duty and those sort of programs, they're made up forces. And for me, and for you, I know, when you read that, it almost makes it a little bit comical because you know it's not real, if you know what I mean. And it's great because everyone's got their own ideas and that. But I thought it's easier to use places that I know, and that the readers will know, and even if they don't know them, might even want to learn about them, you know. But coming up with sort of Eastings or Hastbourne or something like that was just not wasn't going to be on my list of things to do.
Oh, definitely not.
It doesn't make it credible in my mind. I just sometimes it makes it a little bit, as I said, a bit of a doesn't make it serious enough because you know everything's made up. Where my people like, and I'm not just saying Peter James because you already name dropped him, but you know he does his all in Brighton and the sort of surrounding areas. And again, because he uses real places, I think it's better for the reader, to be honest.
Yeah. I think so, and particularly because you've got that knowledge of actually being a socco and being a senior socco as well. You want to show the readers that you are authentic and you know what you're talking about. And I think if you made up some sort of fiction town, then you'd be taking a step back almost, wouldn't you? From what you did.
It's almost making up Toy Town or something like that, isn't it?
That's a different sort of book, isn't it? That's a children's book. Okay, so what can you tell us about some of the characters that are in your book, and are they based on any real people in your life? I've got a few colleagues that want to know this.
I've had two of the colleagues actually contact me and said, that's me in it. And it's, no, I think as with anything, you know, the characters are loosely based on people I've known. They're not, nobody is exactly one person, but they're bits of people, if you know what I mean. And I think that's because, you know, in any walk of life, you've got characters, you've got different age, gender, that sort of thing, and they all, you know, mix together to become a team together sort of thing. So I think that really it's one of those things that there's no one character in there that's exactly one person, but they're sort of mixed up of several people that I've known over the years.
Yeah. All the traits that you like and don't like that you think, oh, that would be that'd be a nice cocktail of a person.
I'd better not say. But no, there's it's not like I've just picked four people and said that's who they are.
Yeah.
They've sort of mixture and again it's something that you bring into the mix, because people's names and things like that, you've got to sit there and try and think of a name that isn't exactly the same as someone that you've known and things like that. It's not complicated, but you've got to keep your wits about you.
Yeah. Okay, so what advice would you give to anyone who wants to set out and write a book?
Do it. Just like I said, there is a book in everyone, and loads of people say, "Oh, I'd love to write a book, but I've never done anything interesting." It's like, yes, you have. Everyone's had an interest in life. Everyone's had a different life, and even if it's someone who thinks they've had a boring job life or something like that, experience that they've had outside life, family life, even the subject that they've got a hobby or something, they can bring that into the mix. And I just, as I said, now that I'm a little bit more into the literary world and reading more and, looking into books a little bit more in depth, you can write about anything. And I do say to people now, it's hard work, but it's great. It's really, when you finish those 2 words at the end, is such an accomplishment and such a relief as well, because it does take a lot of time. And as I say, you re-edit it and edit it and read it, so you almost know it backwards in the end. But I would say anyone who has got any inkling that they might want to write a book, just set some time to one side and try and do it. I know everyone's got busy lives and families and work and that, but even if you just do a chapter every other night or once a week or something like that, it's not something that you can finish in 6 months. It's a long old process, and but you do find, or I find myself, thinking all the time about, what should I get them to do next, and things like this, and it's great. Dog walks have never been the same. My poor dog, he's wandering around on the beach, and I'm thinking about how someone's going to recover a body from somewhere. But,
So do you often have to stop with your dog and make like little notes?
No, I'm not too bad. I do randomly sometimes wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and think of something, and I haven't got a notepad by the bed. I'm not that bad. It's just suddenly ideas. I suddenly realised the other day that I hadn't, without going into too much detail in the next book, I'd forgotten to mention something, but and so I had to rewrite 2 chapters the other day, and it was just like, oh dear.
Maybe a notepad isn't a bad idea after all.
Yeah, maybe it is. I don't think I'll always be writing in it. That's the problem.
No. But I think having just published your book after doing it for 7 years, I mean, part of me thinks that you might like kind of like a break, but you're well into your next novel already. Yeah,
well, like I say, because I actually finished this one physically writing it over 2 years ago. So really, I've been. I didn't want to start the second one until I got a publisher. Because I didn't. Sense, yeah. When I was getting all the negatives, I was thinking, is it really worth all this hassle? But once I got a publisher, and they had sort of said, initially they wanted me to do 3 books anyway. Yeah. I'd already had ideas, so it was sort of let's go sort of thing. So it was. I'd had quite the first, 10,000-15,000 words were very easy because I already had the idea in my head. So, but it's getting there slowly.
Yeah, and I think your fans, your growing fan base, will like the fact that there's going to be another story on the horizon.
It is. Simon Crofts has been looked forward to by quite a few readers already.
Fantastic.
The only thing is, hopefully, it won't take as long to publish this one.
No, well, it's not too bad if it's your first one. If it's your second one and people have to wait 7 years for it.
No, it won't be that long. Just trying to find the time to do it, really.
Yeah.
But, because it's one of those things. I mean, again, listening to other authors and things, some people set aside that whole day for it, things like that. I don't. I tend to do it as and when, when I get a free day, I'll just think, I'll go and I'll sit in the garden and just type away, and it's lovely.
Yeah, especially with the weather we've had recently, eh?
Well, yeah, that's right. Down the south coast.
We wouldn't be British if we weren't sat here talking about the weather, would we?
Yeah.
Oh dear. So finally, your book, Murder by the Seaside. Where can people buy it?
They can get it on Amazon. At the moment, it's only on Amazon actually. It's because it's with first time authors, you tend to end up with smaller publishers, and younger modern publishers tend to do all their work on Amazon.
Yeah.
And obviously you can get the Kindle version and the paperback version on there, but I've yet to see it in a bookshop. I'm not quite sure. Once the initial, because it's only been out for 2.5 weeks now, so once the initial surge is over, that's when obviously it starts going into bookshops. But the thing is with COVID, you see, I can't do any book signings. I'd always dreamed of being sitting in Waterstones and doing a book signing, and then I thought maybe it's not a good dream because nobody might turn up. Sitting there on the table with all my books in the corner and nobody turns up. But no, they're not doing any book signings at the moment.
No.
But
No.
I just have to see how it goes.
Yeah. Well,
I was saying to my wife the other day, though, we were in the park with grandson, and there's a woman sitting on the bench reading a book, and I had to look, and I thought, one day,
yeah,
I just want to see someone reading my book.
Yeah.
I think that's when you know that you've made it, when you see a random stranger reading your book in a random place. Sort of.
Yeah. I think it must be nice if you go on holiday and you see someone reading your book on holiday. Then that would be a good conversational start.
Or even better, if you're on holiday, if someone's reading a foreign language version of it.
Oh yeah, now there's the dream.
I think that's a long way down the line.
Yeah. Well, I've got no doubt if you keep on persevering like you have done, then what with all your background and everything, the fantastic supervisor you were once upon a time, I've got no doubt you'll be a success, Brian.
It's very nice of you to say so.
It's because we share a same surname as well. We're destined for greatness, aren't we?
That's right.
Oh, anyway, I'm going to definitely pick up your book. It sounds really interesting, and I'm sure people that have already got through it can't wait for the next one. Thank you ever so much for talking to us, Brian.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
And great to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too. What was that noise? There it went again, a strange buzzing sound that cut through his dream. As he opened his eyes, he saw that a light was flashing on and off in the bedroom. In that time that seems to take forever, but which only lasts microseconds, Crofts realised it was his phone vibrating on the wooden bedside table that was making the noise, and the strange lights weren't in fact an alien spaceship, but also from the phone. Crofts glanced at the screen and noticed it was a private caller, which could only mean one thing: work. He also noticed it was 12 minutes past 3 in the morning. "Good morning, Mr. Crofts. This is the control room. Sorry to bother you," said a cheery voice. Why do the controllers always say that, mused Crofts, knowing this was someone wide awake and halfway through their shift. "I've been asked to call you by the on-call SIO, as we have a suspicious death over in Hastings. Do you want me to tell you all about it now, or do you want to wake up properly and get back to me?" "I'll get back to you," said Crofts. He knew that any further conversation whilst lying in bed would wake up his wife, Deborah, and maybe even his young son, Oscar, who was asleep in the next room. Much better to wake up properly to get the information. He also knew that if a senior investigating officer from the major crime team was involved, it would be something that needed more than a quick chat. Crofts got out of bed quickly and was wide awake before he was in the spare room. Years of conversations in the middle of the night had made sure he was alert, as any decisions made during those first few moments could be crucial in the investigation. Being half asleep was no excuse for mistakes in this line of work. Crofts called the control room back. This controller was just as cheerful, having probably just finished his break, where he must have consumed some M&Ms or cherry coke, thought Crofts. "Hi, Simon! We have a suspicious death over in Hastings," said the happy controller, as if he was telling him he had won the lottery. Crofts muttered, "What a surprise," under his breath. Having covered Hastings for 15 years, he had got used to the lifestyle of some of its inhabitants, and it wasn't what the tourists to the area imagined. His version of Hastings included drugs and squalor, together with visitors from many parts of the world, all of which appeared in most of the crime in the town, even though the local authorities had tried to inject cash into the place to improve it. "Any other details at this time?" asked Crofts. "It appears that it involves some druggies who have been living in a squat," continued the happy one. "They've had a binge and woke up to find one of them is dead. Someone then phoned it in but fled the scene. Ambulance attended, but the crews are not happy with some of the injuries to the body." "Okay," said Crofts. "I'll start heading over. Who is the on-call SIO?" "It's Tom Mead, but there is one other thing." "That is?" "There is no lighting inside the squat, and there are holes in some of the floors." "In that case, I don't want anyone else to enter the building until I get there," Crofts replied with authority. "I need to assess the scene before we can decide what to do next. Have you called a CSI yet?" "Yes, it's Hannah Jukes. She's on her way from Eastbourne too." Crofts had a quick wash and cleaned his teeth, his mind working on the information that he had been given so far. The fact was that a suspicious death with some type of drugs connection made things easier. It wasn't going to be a Category A type murder, where the offender was unknown to the victim. At some stage the two had been together in this type of murder, and it would cut down the amount of work they would need to do at the scene. The dangers of a squat inhabited by drug users were a whole different kettle of fish. Over the years he had learnt that anything could be around in these types of places. Used needles, drugs, and all the paraphernalia that went with them could be in the building, and if there was no electricity and holes in the floor, that just added to the mix. Coupled with those problems was the fact that the inhabitants of these places didn't exactly live a clean lifestyle. No washing, no changing of clothes, and quite often feces, both human and their dogs, all over the place. "Lovely," Crofts muttered to himself as he headed into the kitchen to boil the kettle. His house almost seemed like a show home compared to where he was heading, although Deborah always worried about it being untidy. Crofts had lost count of the amount of times he had told her he would like to show her round some of the hovels that they had to work in to show how clean their home really was. Crofts always made himself a cup of tea before setting off at this time of day, as you never knew when you were going to get another cuppa. While he waited for the kettle to boil, he called Hannah to see where she was. She said she was just heading out to a van to drive over to Hastings. Crofts told her of his decision that no one was to enter the building until he arrived. He could hear the relief in her voice. Although she had been a CSI for about 3 years, Hannah still needed reassurance sometimes, especially on more complicated scenes such as this. After finishing the call, and while sipping his tea, Crofts thought over their conversation. He remembered that he was like that when he first started, but after 15 years' experience in the scenes of crime world, there wasn't much that fazed him anymore. Scenes of crime officers, that was their job, and that was why they were originally called SOCOs. Most police forces had changed to calling their investigators CSI due to the popularity of American TV series, but in Sussex, all were glad they had remained SOCOs. All were now civilian staff, unlike when Crofts had joined, when they were half police officers and half civilians. It had always been a worry that civilians couldn't carry out the role properly. This was unfounded, as Crofts and his fellow senior SOCOs were held in great esteem, especially by the major crime teams, who relied on their evidence to convict the baddies. Crofts finished his tea, grabbed his blue investigator's notebook, and headed out to the Ford-focused estate he used when on call. As usual, he marvelled at the stillness of the night outside. It was, he sometimes said, the best part of the day. No noise, no one around, peace and calm before the day broke. As Crofts opened the car door, he hoped as always that he wouldn't have to wake any of his neighbours as the engine started. He lived in a quiet close near the Sovereign Harbour, and got on well with those who lived around him. They always said they didn't hear him in the night, but he was never too sure. Crofts drove out of the residential area and onto the main A259 as he headed to the wonders of Hastings. This is crime scene investigator Chris G signing off. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed listening. Be sure to subscribe and follow my social media at CSI Chris G. Until next time, stay safe out there, and I'll see you at the next crime scene.